Hi Sam.
Good morning.
I came a bit earlier. I was wondering if I came at the wrong time, but there you are, so now I feel safer.
Oh, ha. Yeah. Well, oh no. Apparently, I didn't publish the page. I really hope it doesn't whack all my notes. I put together the agenda last night, but then, oh no, I see what's going on. Okay, I'm logged in. Oh, um, how do I keep it happy? I've committed a sin of the wiki in that I don't think I published a thing, and now it's mad at me because I haven't logged in yet. Oh, I got it to work. Okay. That's there. Where'd Zoom go? There's Zoom. And we have people. Perfect. Let's see. Welcome, folks, to the 28th of February 2024 Aries Working Group call. We're going to discuss some credential protocol stuff today, which I think will be wonderful. This is a Hyperledger call, so the antitrust policy and the code of conduct are in effect. Please be mindful of those. Links are in the agenda. Link to the agenda is available on the wiki, but also in the chat. You're welcome to make any changes. Note that it won't show up live here on my screen, but they will be merged in afterwards. So if you add yourself to the attendees list or any other changes, then they'll be available post-meeting, all merged in together. Is there anyone new today that would like to introduce themselves? Any announcements we should have on our list but don't? All right. Does any projects want to share any status or work updates?
Yeah, I can do a bit for VCX. So we have just recently mostly completed the integration with ASCAR. So now there's two interchangeable implementations, world implementations available. It's possible to switch between the VDR tools in the SDK and the ASCAR one. Uh, and also on a similar note, we have done sort of first version, first iteration of unencrypted RS integration instead of Credex for our unencrypted engine. So those are also interchangeable essentially, but might still need some further work and alignment, especially with in terms of the revocation status lists. Some refactoring should be still probably done. But yeah, it's looking good. Also it essentially triggered us to do a whole bunch of refactoring across the board. So really happy with these updates. And now we are also um, in having progress updating ATH back channel, and that should also come with did exchange protocol testing with other implementations. So I'm looking forward for that. And yeah, that's probably it for us right now.
That's probably it. That's huge.
Yeah,
Nice work.
accumulated a bit. Haven't been here for a while, so.
Maybe that's the success to having a lot to say. No, thank you. That's awesome. Any other projects want to uh, share some progress? All right. Um, I said I wasn't not going to ask one more time, but I'm going to ask one more time about the Aries testimonials examples of use, and then I would love to have a discussion about the um, our goals for the credential protocols as we move to DIDCOM v2. And I have some links here for discussion, but also want to discuss general goals that are not covered necessarily by this. And so this would be a good session for just voicing desires, even if we don't select them for the initial pass in order to make DIDCOM v2 easier. Anyway, this is what I have on the agenda today. Are there other things that should be on the agenda that we want to make any changes to or adjust things before we get started on today? All right. Also, just the general reminder that I love when people request topics or suggest things that we ought to talk about. In the absence of that, I do my best to try and pick things. So if you think I'm doing a subpar job, then please suggest topics so that we can cover those. I will keep trying, of course, to move things in the right direction and the things that are important to talk about as a community. But I love topics when folks want to suggest them. So that's fantastic. Okay, first off, a pitch for the testimonies examples of use. The reason why I decided to request one more time is we had a couple submissions that happened just this last week, and so I thought it might be worth doing one more time. This form allows you to submit a. I should just bring it up so you see what it looks like. Allows you to submit a quote or a statement about how the Aries project has been useful or impacted you or benefited you in your work. And then we're conscious that sometimes organizations struggle to approve sort of official statements about projects and works and things. And so you can actually select any sort of attribution that's possible, including not using your name or including using your name, but not necessarily the organization itself, even the type of organization, or really whatever you want. But the goal is to hopefully gather a quote about how this has impacted your work and your involvement here, and then there's some answers here, and there's notes going on there. So anyway, that's there, and please do, if you have not, take the time to craft and submit a statement. And one of the problems that we're hoping to solve with this, I'm speaking a little bit on behalf of Alex and Helen here, but one of the problems that we're hoping to solve is that projects, open source projects that we're all busy building and using, don't tend to get much awareness about how broadly they're used. And so there's not a very good measuring stick, because anyone can just pull stuff down and use it without really telling anybody. There's not really a good measuring stick about how successful the project actually is. And so as part of an effort to raise awareness about how much it is being used, we're hoping to gather these quotes from folks that help highlight the areas of industry it's being used and the benefits that the use of Aries provides. Um, and so please, I beg thee to submit a statement if you haven't already. Helen, Alex, anything in addition to that, or?
Yeah, just that we had our monthly Aries marketing committee meeting yesterday. Again, anybody who would like to join those calls is welcome. If you have somebody in your organization, product manager or a marketer or public relations, whatever, communications person, somebody who does a lot of writing. We would love to have their input as well. Again, having a healthy community is really important to the growth of the project. Having more people come and use it and deploy it and participate in the community is really helpful for the overall growth of all of it. So please join us. We will be working on some blog posts for that will be released on the Hyperledger by the Hyperledger staff on hyperledger.org regarding the kind of a look at what Aries is doing, has been doing over the last year and will be doing this year. So that'll be our first blog post. We'll have that out within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks. It'll be based on the annual report that Stephen Curran put together. But if you'd like to participate and help with that at all, please reach out. And like Sam said, we would love to spotlight you. We would love to spotlight you in the community doing the work, and your thoughts on Aries, why you're here, why you're using it, why you're excited about it, how this technology has helped you in whatever you do. So please, as Sam said, click on that form, write a couple nice things about Aries, and yeah, we'll be good. We'll be good to go. Thank you so much for everybody's help in advance. Oh, and also I posted in Discord about trying to generate some ideas for the Interopathon, the next Interopathon event. If you have ideas about what you'd like to test, if you're sitting on something, an agent, a wallet, something that you've made that you're curious about how it works with other people's wares, we would love to have an event where you all could come together and organize it. And we'll organize it. You come together and test things against one another. So please jump onto that thread on the main Aries Discord channel and let us know what you have, and we'll put that event together.
Awesome. Thanks, Helen. And that's in the Discord channel to respond to that, which is awesome. Okay. The main topic for today is credential protocols, discussing the protocols for DIDComm v2. There's a couple of goals here that I think we have. One is to clarify the version of the protocol that we should move to during DIDComm v2 adoption. There's changes between DIDComm v1 and DIDComm v2 in the way that attachments work, which necessitates at least a minor touch to the protocols themselves to make that happen. So I have some links here and some goals, and the goals could be considered like a wish list for things we wish were different about the credential protocols, and then also there was work that happened prior to the formalization of DIDComm v2 that was originally called Wacky PEX and was renamed to Wacky DIDComm. I think that happened because the DIDComm community was the most active in the creation of that, and so they ended up just kind of renaming it to recognize that. And as part of that work, I've got links here to the v3s of the protocols that were created at that time as an adaptation to align with just the DIDComm v2 format. And so you'll notice it looks quite similar. The main difference is that the attachments travel in the DIDComm v2 format instead of in the format used in DIDComm v1. And so that's really the only change that happened there, I believe. And the same thing, there's issue credential present proof is similar where this happened. These never got touched by the .1 and .2 releases that we discussed last week and backed off. And so they're the same, again, just a handling of attachments. And so it's possible that we formalize these and identify that this is in fact the target, the v3s issued here, as what we're targeting. But it's also possible we have a little bit of time that we could formalize something else or address other issues that we want to as part of that process. And so that's what today's discussion is about. And so I think there's two goals here that we have that we can kind of discuss simultaneously. One is, what do we wish was different about the protocols themselves? And the other one is, which of those features do we actually want to target for something that we would move directly to during the adoption of DIDCOM v2 into the Aries code bases that we're working on. Um, yeah. Any initial thoughts, or should we dive right into any wish list items that folks might have for the protocols?
Maybe a question about the difference between the V3 and the previous ones. You said the difference is mainly in the attachment formats, right? If my memory doesn't faults me, lies to me, is it right that in the original V1 and V2, there was something like three different ways of doing attachments, but then in the V3, it's just one of those three ways. Is that correct? So basically V3 is subset, the way to do attachments in V3 is subset of V1 or V2?
Kind of. DIDCOM v1 and v2 are different in attachments. DIDCOM v1 itself had three separate ways to do attachments, and one of the things we simplified in DIDCOM v2 was just standardizing on one of them. And so the problem that we have is that the credential protocols had identified one of the ways, of the three ways inside of DIDCOM v1 in order to do attachments, and it wasn't the one selected in DIDCOM v2, which means that it's the actual credential protocols themselves did not recognize all three ways that were possible, and so it is a shift instead of a narrowing from the credential protocols perspective. Does that make sense, Patrick?
Yeah. So wait, can you go back to the part you said that they identified different than the one which was selected? Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me do. So I'll give you an example. Is probably the clearest way to show this. So this, oh, we didn't pull the examples out, but okay. So this attach, this is a proposed message, so it's a little bit less obvious, but this tilde attach was one of the attachment methods possible in DIDCOM v1. Let me find a more clear example. Here's a good one. So this is this offers tilde attach was one of the ways of doing an attachment in DIDCOM v1, and that was the tilde attachments was the way that we had designated in issue credential v2. So in v3, the tilde attach option is gone, and the attachments array outside of the body of the message. The attachments array is the way of including attachments. They can have an ID that can be identified, or you can just simply understand what it is based on the content actually being provided. But this is a proposed presentation. Better is if I showed you the same as a request.
Yeah, but I get it.
But
Yeah. So previously there was a tilde here. It's a separate field, an array.
Yes.
Somewhat differently identified. So the attachment format in the V3 that was not present in the old protocols, which are part of DITCOM v1. Is that right?
It was not part of the issue credential protocols and present proof protocols. It was generally supported by DIDCOM v1.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
it was
right,
not
right.
in these specific protocols. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's not a massive change. This is not something that should require a complete rewrite of the credential handling code. It just needs to be adjusted to be able to pull the data from the different attachment format instead. But it is a touch. It will have to be adjusted in order to work on DIDCOM v2. So because of that, the goal was to create a new version of the protocol entirely, just because of the differences in processing the messages to make that happen. But the underlying credential code, for example, should be the same, because this is by itself not introducing a change in either the flows or in the actual data formats of the offers, etc., just where they're included into the message.
Yeah. So the format in V3 issue credential, that's the format which is used there. That's DITCOM v2 wide, like used across DITCOM v2, right? That's
So
why
this is the only attachments format that is available in
DITCOM
DIDCOM
v2.
v2. Yes.
Oh, okay. Right.
One of the main differences between DIDCOM v1 and DIDCOM v2 is some things, we're able to, I believe, simplify some things. For example, DIDCOM v2 uses a body for all of the attributes that are part of a specific message type, and the headers that we had before that were previously designated with a decorator with an @ sign are now just included outside of the body element. And so this example doesn't show that, but that's one of the simplifying things that was done between V1 and V2. And so overall, I believe that V2 is simpler, but it does touch some of those things that for protocols built on them. Good questions, Patrick. So I think my general question is before we dive into the details of what these are and whether we want to use these or something else, what are the wish list? Has there been something that you've identified in your use of the protocols where you're thinking, I wish this was different. I wish it was handled differently or different in some manner. I'm curious if anyone has thoughts or feedback on maybe what they think would be different here. As we're touching the protocols anyway, it's a decent chance to take a look at it.
Jump in again. So there was something I was mentioning. I was kind of pulling out on one of these meetings earlier. It was a couple of months ago. I was questioning some of the features of issue credential v2 protocol, and mainly it was related. There's actually a GitHub issue, I think, still open, perhaps, in the RFC repo. And I was pointing out some of the features, questioning whether these features are necessary in regards to like badge issuance or issuing, multiple types of multiple credential, multiple types of credential with the same data within a single, protocol conversation within a single message. So I don't know, for me, like, and since then, I don't know, we closed it up somehow with some conclusion, I think. And from then on, I didn't really thought of it. But if this is a chance to like rethink stuff in V3, maybe I'll have a look at it again and try to raise some questions. I don't really have a clarity as what do I want to suggest. I just want to signal the area where some of my maybe concerns would arise. I remembered in my rationale was that like, oh, if I want to issue multiple credentials at once, I'll just start multiple issuance, threads, separate conversations, just send 20 different offers, and then it can be the role of the device to present those in some human, easily consumable fashion. Like it doesn't have to be, the batching doesn't have to be embedded in a protocol. Yeah, it was something like that. I just felt when we start to implement the V2, this batching brought the kind of complexity which was a bit difficult to model for us in Rust. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean to say it's bad, but there was a thoughts like that. I don't know what you guys think.
I wanted to highlight that last week we talked about this PR which Steven submitted, which actually reverts the .1 and .2 out of issue credential and present proof. And this one of these had to do with credential supplements. The other one had to do with the multiple credential issuance here that I believe you're talking about. So some of this may already be covered by your concept, and I think that as part of what you're talking about. But we certainly want to hear about other things that you think may also not be necessary in the spirit of simplifying things as part of that process. So yes, thank you for speaking up.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that there's this PR, so I'll have a look at it. So that PR is the proposal for V3, or what is this actually?
No, it's actually reverting .1 and .2 out of version 2.
So like basically V3, which reverts like dot 3, which reverts .1 and .2, kind of.
Kind of, only we weren't going to go to a .3. We were just going to pull them out. So .2 added credential supplements, which people like more than .1. But because of the way they were named, it's really hard to do .2 without supporting .1. It makes that really awkward. And so the discussion yesterday was, we like this, we should put it back in, but it makes sense to revert it out at this point because of the difficulty in implementing it. Not because it's difficult itself, but because of the difficulty of implementing .1.
I see.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, have a look, and then other things not covered by that would be great to add. But this is already something that Stephen brought up that we had general agreement on last week. It's very good. Jorge, your hand is up.
Yeah, I had a question, echoing a question actually that was posted recently on the Aries Discord channel regarding the abandoned state on a presentation proof request. So what is the ideal outcome in that scenario where a proof presentation request is declined by the holder or the prover? We've been getting we've been fielding some questions from our users around that. It feels like the verifier just, it's kind of left hanging there, and the user might not, might be expecting some kind of acknowledgement that, or a status change on the verification. So what I'm curious, what's the best practice there, or is the intent not to relay that declined state back to the verifier?
So saying no instead of just never saying anything?
Correct.
So I'm going to add that to the list of discussion points, even though I don't necessarily know what the answer is. Stephen, did you have a comment there?
Sure, I can say what I think. I definitely think a problem report should be sent back from the holder. Back in the early days when we were very diligent about leaving every entity to do what they wanted to do, and if you don't want to answer it, you can just ignore it and things like that. We were very diligent about making sure that was an option, but I think we overplayed that. And from a user experience perspective, it creates a pretty terrible situation. So there's no need to ignore, simply decline and do nothing, but rather that's what problem report is intended for. So the ideal is the holder would send a holder software would send a problem report back to the verifier. The verifier would then be able to clean up their state and be able to terminate it. So I believe that's what is being done or being worked on by BC Wallet and related services, so that the wallet would send a problem report back. The other one that we're seeing that we are concerned with is likewise an offer goes over to a holder and then doesn't get answered in some time. And so we've talked a lot about putting a timing attribute. So there is a timing protocol. And so there is a way to put timing on to say, hey, this presentation or this offer is only good for the next 2 hours or whatever. And that also gives the issuer and or the verifier an opportunity to clean up after, and for the holder to know, oh, you know what, this thing that the person's getting to now, it's no longer any good. That of course you then have to provide other approaches if, you know, but just to give that more information to the two parties. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that's what comes to mind when you ask that question.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. Now, my question is there an opportunity to maybe extend or make modifications to the protocol so to make these activities more explicit?
Yeah.
So absolutely on the first one, the problem report, that is just a clarification, and I would hope it's in there, but if it's not, it absolutely should be in there because that's just a clarification. That is expected behavior from the beginning. And then the timer one, the timing option, that again, we can use that as a clarification because it's already a protocol that already exists. It's not in major use, but certainly is viable, and again can be added as initially as a clarification to say, hey, you can do that, and then start to get it pushed along, so it gets accepted and used more broadly.
So there's two opportunities. I'll extend a little bit what Stephen said. There's two opportunities to document that better. If it's a clarification on the existing version 2, we can actually update the version 2 to add that clarification without changing any version numbers on it. It
Absolutely.
should, though, as we're considering the version we want to move to after V3, the next protocol version we want to target, we can also make sure that it is also further clarified there. And Stephen, while you're talking about it, I also added this generically to the notes that that we might document a timeout for the offer, even if it's not a new feature, but simply making clear the use of an existing feature. Then that's useful, right? And the advantage here is that you can prevent a better UX where, if you actually state what the timeout actually is, then the holder's software can warn them and say, yeah, this isn't valid anymore, and maybe just disappear it or show it as an expired state.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in that way, there's less of a chance that the holder returns with an old offer, and the issuer's like, yeah, no, I forgot about that like a month ago, and can help clarify the UX there, which is really good. Cool. Other Stephen, did you have other things that you had unmuted before? Did you have other things you wanted to mention?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. That one is removal of anything related to the payments. Obviously nothing has ever happened with those, and any sort of suggestion that would happen is unlikely at that level.
That's a great idea.
The preview probably should be, so the preview certainly comes in place in the, so preview is set right now as a certain format. And when you use JSON LD, for example, or VC data model, W3C verifiable credential data model credentials, that preview model doesn't really work. It works for an on-creds, but not for W3C VC data model credentials. So that should probably be opened up to be basically an unsigned version of the credential to be issued. And then it can be flexible to match whatever it is that's going to be issued. So it's probably both simpler and more open. So this came up when we were doing, Timo brought this up a month or so ago when we were talking about how to do an on-creds in W3C VC data model format.
Cool. Excellent.
And then the last one I had that I really don't know about, but throw out, is I have never seen, as far as I know, anyone using actual negotiation. So we talked about, oh, I get an offer and then I counter it as a holder with a proposal. That seems really hard.
Stephen, we are doing that. I think I'd mentioned in one of the
Oh,
previous calls, we are doing that in the mining flows.
okay.
And
Okay.
At some point we can even show it to you guys.
That would be awesome.
That would
Yeah,
Okay.
so we are using proposals and negotiation in case of both proof as well as in case of
Oh,
issuance
excellent.
as well as proposal issuance and proofs both.
Okay. So that was one definitely I was just asking about it more than anything. So I wasn't a direction. So I'm delighted to hear somebody's using it. Would love to see the examples. And I do realize the other purpose for it is being able to have the holder initiate the process.
Yeah.
So it certainly has value there. It's the negotiation part, but so I'm fascinated by that. So that's great. Love to see it.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure Kyle can give you a detailed industry use case there, but yeah, but
Excellent.
we can show you how it's implemented.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, couple of other things. One question was, as we move towards fully qualified DIDs, which is a really good thing, can we also look at where is the credential definition location? So ledger or whatever, depending upon where it is. So today we get only the ID, but we don't know the location. So we need to then go to a multi-ledger search, if I understand correctly, the underneath of it. But if we can get the ledger along with the issuance, that'll be great.
Isn't this covered by Did Indy?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think Did Indy is the answer there, which is a little bit of a separate effort. But Did Indy has the ability to reference cred defs that includes ledger information.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we should
other,
address the language that talks about references to make sure that it's clear how Did Indy could be used as soon as we're able to get it deployed in practice.
what about if it is other did method? If the issuer is holding a different did method?
Again, it's up to the did methods. I mean, the purpose of a did method should be that it includes how to resolve it down to the literal location of it. Indy didn't have that in originally, so it had to be added as did Indy. Others, do you have examples of ones that don't, for example?
We know, for example, obviously we know in case of
Okay.
did solve,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
but the main thing, Stephen and Sam, was that when we receive it, we'd like to know where the definition is rather than go search for it.
Totally.
And the other related question really was is it ever possible that two different ledgers can have credential definition IDs which are exactly the same? I don't know cryptography works, and it's possible. Like, is it possible that we may have a clash?
So yes, unfortunately, it's even worse.
Okay.
So two things about that. So yeah, generally it's a problem because of an assumption made many years ago in Indy that you would know what ledger you were talking to versus multiple. So as I say, did Indy solves that. When you look at other did methods, you should always make sure that's used. So not using did methods that don't have that is kind of the right answer there. And as I said, the design of DIDs is such that they should be resolvable, end of story, and there should be a unique known place for it. On your second question, a cred def can't be duplicated anywhere. So you can't have an identical cred cred def in two places. But what you can have is the ID of a cred def can be the same on two ledgers where you're using did solve. So if I go to be sovereign test and I use a seed to create a did, and then I go to sovereign testnet and use that same seed, I'm going to wind up with the same did, and it's going to be did solve. And because there's no identifier for where it is, you're going to get the same thing. And you can then create a cred def on both of them using the same tag.
Right.
The schema, actually, it might be no, I guess it is pretty hard because the schema is embedded in it. The schema the schema transaction number is embedded in it. So no, you couldn't do it. Sorry, I take that back.
Okay.
You can't do it because in the legacy indie method, the schema transaction number is embedded in it, and you could not get that to be the same on two ledgers. So you're pretty safe there. What you can have is two dids that look the same, but not two cred defs. Sorry about that.
So
And I tried to post an example. It's been over a year since I've looked at the did indie stuff, but I tried to post a quick example of like a did indie on the sovereign network and DCO network with effectively the same credential definition ID. And you can see how it both indicates which one it's at and how, because it includes in the did indie where it's at, there is no collision of the actual IDs.
Okay. So is this what we will support in the new thing, Sam, that you're trying to capture?
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's disallowed at this point, but I think we need to clarify that how these references can be used to pave the way for better behavior in the future. The problem is that I'm nervous about tying the use of this credential to the deployment of did indie, but we need to make sure that it allows and maybe even recommends did indie or any other did method that has the appropriate properties for referencing those assets.
Yeah,
So
the only
what you're highlighting is a problem. The difficulty is that the solution is actually like in several different pieces that move independently.
Yeah, the only concern is to put this as a recommendation. If we put this as a recommendation, then we are not checking it when it's sent, and then as a recipient, you don't know what you're getting, and now you get into a very complex logic all the time.
Well, the reason why I'm leaving it this way is because there's two outcomes of this wish list. One is the protocol that we identify as the immediate successor as we move to DIDCOM v2. And the other outcome is a future version of the protocol that makes more changes, but does not also incorporate the move to DIDCOM v2, meaning that's already happened. And so what I don't want to do is fix everything all at the same time, which then delays or makes it more difficult to move to DIDCOM v2. So by referencing it like this, what I'm doing is highlighting the problem. I think that mandating the use of something like did-indie or a ledger-specific identifier is good, but I'm worried about preventing the adoption of DIDCOM v2 because of some external issue like did-indie adoption.
No,
I'm
not.
That's my concern there.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting a did indie adoption as a recommendation. What we were saying is that when the credential issuance flow is happening, the credential definition ID which is shared should be fully resolvable, rather than you go through a multi-ledger search to resolve it.
Yes, the question is about whether we reinvent something since did-indie's already been created, or we just say you should use did-indie, and that's the tension in that choice.
Yeah, I don't think we can say you have to use did-indie because there'll be other did methods people will issue.
But that's not the point that I was trying to get at. Let me try and clarify. if we say that you must use one of did-ind or another did method that uses it, there will be folks that want to adopt didcom v2 with the use of Aries that now can't because they don't yet have the ability to use a fully referenced thing. And so that's the tension that I'm trying to manage a little bit. But I've got it noted, and this will come back up in discussion. We can figure out what we should do there.
Sure.
Stephen, was that the end of your list?
I had one more thing, Stephen, on the documenting the timeout. The timeout, if we support that, doesn't that have to be supported by, especially in case of government issued credentials, any legislation? Because today in the paper form, I don't think there's a concept of a timeout of when the government issues any license or documents or certificates. Does that make sense?
No, I don't think that's relevant. All we're saying is we are offering to give you a digital version of your license or whatever it might be, your registration, your license, your permit. And if you don't take it up by a certain amount of time, you'll have to initiate the process again. I don't think there's any sort of legislative impact on that.
Okay.
Oddly, the reason that this came up was we use at BC Gov, for example, we have a multi-tenant version of Akapai that services all of the entities that issue permits and so on. And we only want in that database activities that are in flight. And of course, an offer is in flight. So as long as it's in flight, it should remain, but we don't want to retain PII basically in that database any longer than necessary. So that's what triggered it, was actually government regulation, but the opposite way of what you're saying.
It's effectively like the your timeout for logging into a website where you're automatically kicked off.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. No, Sam, you were asking about anything else? I think those are the main ones I had.
Subhasis, did you have any additional points that you wanted to make before we go to Patrick?
No. Thanks, Sam. Nothing else.
Excellent. Okay. Good. This has been fantastic, by the way. Patrick, you're up.
Just a quick question. I'm not sure how we reached that discussion about timeouts. Is this discussion about having some sort of timeout field as a part of protocol, or is it about the timing field within the thread?
The thread, sorry, the timing, it's the timing attachment. There's an RFC called timing, not part of AIP2, so it would be grassroots for now, but could be part of AIP3. But basically, it's a mechanism that could be used.
We could also document it more clearly.
Yeah,
Even if it's an existing feature, we could document its use within the protocol as an example more clearly.
Right. I just wonder how it sounds to me like it conflicts a bit with the concept of timeout in the threading decorator, because there is
interesting.
a bunch of timing stuff there, I think.
I better look at that.
There may not be in DIDCOM v2. Threading got simpler, I think, in DIDCOM v2 is one of the other things that happened. But we should look at this. So that's good. Okay, I had a few. So one person not here that I know has opinions about this is Daniel Bloom. He is busy supporting his wife in taking care of a newborn. So I'm going to channel my inner Daniel a little bit, and I apologize if I do so poorly. One of the thoughts that he has had is that anytime, if you compare this diagram, the choreography diagram, for either issue credential or present proof, this looks really complicated to someone who's doing like LD credentials. And to Stephen's point, the actual proposal piece and the negotiation is substantially less used than the other features in here. And so one of the thoughts that Daniel had is that rather than having one big protocol, we could separate this out into separate protocols that work together in concert. DINCOM has that advantage, right? That you can use protocols together. And so just roughly speaking, you could have one protocol that's all about the actual issuance, another one that's about the preparation for issuance. This is a credential offering relevant to technologies that need to provide like a proof of something for holder binding, like a non-creds does. And then the third one would be the piece that adds the negotiation ability to make that happen. And so this could be 3 protocols, and that carries some downsides of the fact that now there's 3 protocols to sort of keep track of. But we have a problem that's kind of inherent anyway. If if 2 parties are communicating to issue a credential, and each party implements a subset of this protocol, which I believe is currently very common today, you don't know which subset of the protocol the other party actually supports. We could add some specific indication in Discover features that would help indicate this type of a thing. But the other way to do it is to split it into 3 separate protocols, and you could understand which types of flows are possible by the other party simply by which of the the issue credentials sort of sub protocols, if you will, are actually used. Do you support only just straight issuance? Do you support issuance using the passing of an offer in the actual credential request, which allows you to prove a binding? And do you actually support the piece that does negotiation? And so that was one of them. So the different protocols for different sections was that idea there. And to do it in order, this would be like negotiation. And I'm sure I'm misspelling stuff. So negotiation, this would be offer request, and then the actual issuance. Could be that way. The other way of breaking this down that Daniel brought up is that right now we use this flow, and we have designed this to be agnostic to the actual data types being passed alongside the flows. And one of the thoughts that Daniel was exploring was, what would it actually look like if we didn't try to make this credential type agnostic? Would we benefit from some simplification of the protocols if the protocols were actually designed to be credential type specific, in which case you wouldn't necessarily split these into 3 pieces, but you could just have one, for example, that deals with LD credentials. And because of the changing nature of LD credentials, then the actual overall choreography could be simpler. A separate one for non-creds and a separate one for these other ones. And they could follow similar patterns, but that by getting actually specific about the data types actually passed, then you could customize the choreography to the specific credential type being issued. And that was the other thing that's been discussed. And again, these are further reaching things than we have talked about, but as long as we're talking about touching them, we're not, of course, discussing whether we're actually going to adopt this yet, just sort of exploring the ideas.
Yeah, I'd say not a fan of that last one. I think we've benefited from just having the attachment types and a protocol, but not tied to the credential types. But that's,
and again, I'm channeling some Daniel here. Yeah. I'm channeling some Daniel here, so I'm particularly ill prepared to defend these. But I wanted to raise them as long as we were talking about it. So, yeah.
The other things, Sam, I don't know how the implementation will look, but from a user perspective, if they are doing a negotiation and they're doing a request and a proposal and all those type of things, from their perspective, the view is one flow. They're not looking at it as if they're different flows. So for them, it's one trust task. It's not different trust tasks. So that's why it's a little difficult to comment without knowing how it will get implemented, and will we now have to tie things together to make it look like one, and whether that will complicate things and all of that. Don't know. But from a user perspective, the main comment will be for them, it's one trust task.
I don't disagree, and I think that the goal is to remain as simple as possible from the user's perspective. But even doing that, there's no reason why several protocols couldn't be involved. Was the point, and I believe you're talking about the different protocol for different sections issue, right?
Yeah. If they get broken down into different sections, how does the implementation look in terms of the user?
Absolutely. I think we have made grave mistakes in our community in too closely aligning protocol steps with what the user actually sees and experiences. And so the encouragement here is to separate the actual protocols being used from what appears to be a top level trust task in the user's view, so that there's not a one-to-one correlation between the behavior of the user or the experience of the user and the individual protocol being used. But we definitely need some discussion of what that would actually look like. These two last ideas are substantial enough that really, to further communication, we would need to have a straw man proposal of what they would actually look like in order to really evaluate those at all. So there's work to be done to describe these to make that happen. So also, Jorge, we're out of time, but I grabbed your topic and I stuck it in a future topic here. Because I know that there's more than you who is interested in doing something like coordinating WebRTC, and this seems like a good opportunity. And Colton's chimed in on it as well. So
Awesome.
so that's I've added that to the future topic list. And if I don't get to it fast enough, then pester me and we'll make it happen.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks.
So this was
Sam,
yeah.
Sam, one sec, just grab that UI comment you made and put it into that different protocols part. Because I think you've hit on something that we really need to take advantage of, which is we have tons of experience now in using these things. What has been working at the UI level and what's been a challenge and what could be helped. That's a really good way of looking at this. We have lots of experience, Jorge and a bunch of other teams. So
Right. Yes.
I take advantage of that.
Definitely. So this was a good discussion. We're not done and we're out of time. So we'll continue this in the future. But I really appreciate the discussion today. This was exactly what I'd hoped to have is a discussion about kind of what these ought to look like. I think that future discussions we can focus on maybe prioritizing or deeper consideration of these things, including just deciding that these things should be in the next version, particularly things that are clarifications. I think would be fantastic. And then based on that, we can take a look at the existing V3 to decide if V3 is what we want, or if what we want is a V3.x, some improvement on it. Or whether we want to just jump to a V4 and skip over any potential complexity of screwing up V3 for those that have implemented that, and I know there's a few. The other thing that I want to highlight here is the return of supplements that's being axed sort of as a byproduct of the multiple issuance, and so we can consider the return of supplements as well. With that, we're out of time. Thank you, folks, for coming. We will continue related discussions in future meetings. Thank you for being here and all of your feedback. And we'll see you later.
Thank you.